All right, so today we are diving deep into building confidence in speaking English.
Ooh, exciting.
We're going to be looking at the source called Building Confidence in English Speaking for Beginners. I think it'll be really helpful for our listeners. Um, have you ever felt nervous speaking English?
Oh, absolutely. Especially when I was first starting out. It's that feeling of vulnerability, putting yourself out there. But what I found interesting about this source is how it addresses that fear right away. It dives straight into this idea of mistakes, using them as stepping stones, even keeping a mistake journal.
A mistake journal. Okay, I have to admit I've never heard of that before. What is a mistake journal?
Basically, every time you make a mistake, instead of, getting discouraged, you write it down, and then you take a moment to think about it. Why did you make that mistake? Was it a grammar slip up, or was it a vocabulary gap, or maybe even like a pronunciation issue? And by doing that, by understanding the why behind the error, you're turning it into a learning opportunity.
I love that. Turning those oops moments into lessons. So it's not just about accepting mistakes. It's about actively using them to get better, to refine our skills.
Exactly. And the source goes on to say that we should start with small, bite-sized pieces of language.
Yeah.
Just simple phrases that we can practice until they become like second nature.
Oh, I like that. So instead of trying to master everything at once, you break it down into smaller, more manageable chunks. What kind of phrases are we talking about here?
Like, think about greetings. So instead of just saying hi, you could say, hey, how's it going?
Oh, yeah.
Or, instead of goodbye, you could practice saying, see you later. And these phrases feel a lot more natural, and they give you that extra confidence boost.
Okay, I can already see how using those phrases would make me sound more fluent, more like a native speaker. It's like having these little prepackaged units of language ready to go. And it's funny because I think one of the things that makes me freeze up sometimes is that I'm trying to remember all the grammar rules in my head, and then I just end up saying nothing.
Oh, I know exactly what you mean. You get stuck in your head, and then the words just won't come out.
Exactly.
And that's actually something that the source talks about, too, this idea of prioritizing communication over perfection. It's really reminding us that the goal is to get your message across, to connect with someone, even if it's not grammatically perfect.
Okay, that's a huge relief to hear. So I don't need to be a walking dictionary to start speaking English.
No, not at all. In fact, there's this great example in the source. Imagine you're trying to order food, but you can't, for the life of you, remember the word hungry. And instead of getting flustered, you could simply say, I want to eat.
Oh, that's a good one. So it's about being resourceful, adapting to the situation, even if you don't have that exact word.
Exactly. And that's where those phrases that we were talking about earlier come in handy again.
Yeah, it's like having these tools in your back pocket to help you bridge those gaps in your vocabulary.
And, it makes you sound so much more natural. Think about it. When was the last time you heard a native speaker say, like, I require sustenance?
Never.
Probably never, right? So it's about sounding like a real person.
I am really liking this source already.
That's a good one.
What else does it say?
Well, it also talks about all the resources that we have available right at our fingertips. Technology.
Ah, technology.
Things like language learning apps or online dictionaries, even YouTube. It's like having this whole world of language learning just right there in your pocket or on your computer.
Okay, that's definitely exciting, but I have to say, sometimes it can feel a bit overwhelming. There are just so many apps out there, like where do you even begin?
Yeah, it's a jungle out there for sure. But I think one helpful thing is to be specific. For example, the source mentions this app called LASA Speak, which uses AI to analyze your speech and give you personalized feedback on your pronunciation.
Oh, wow. So it's like having a pronunciation coach right there in your pocket.
Exactly. And for vocabulary building, there's an app like Memrise that uses spaced repetition and all these fun mnemonics to help you remember those tricky words.
Okay, I'm writing these down. LSA, Speak, and Memrise. I need to check these out.
Yeah, they're great. And, we shouldn't forget about good old-fashioned conversation. The source really emphasizes the importance of finding speaking partners. And that could be through language exchanges, or maybe even just asking friends or colleagues who speak English to chat with you.
Oh, that's a good point. Sometimes we get so caught up in all the apps and technology that we forget about the power of just talking to real people.
Right, and those conversations, they don't need to be perfect. It's more about getting comfortable with the rhythm of spoken English, trying out those phrases we were talking about, and just building up your confidence.
Yeah, so it's like building a muscle, but for language. And each conversation is like a rep. Even if you stumble a bit, you're still making progress.
Exactly.
I have to say, this approach is really changing my mindset. Instead of feeling afraid of making mistakes or those awkward silences, I'm starting to see them as opportunities to learn and grow.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's exactly the kind of shift we want to encourage.
It's about embracing the journey, right?
Yes. And speaking of growth, the source has some great advice on how to stay motivated and celebrate those wins along the way. It's all about acknowledging those little victories along the way. Like when you finally nail that tricky pronunciation or have a conversation without completely freezing up.
Those moments when you realize, hey, I'm actually doing this. I'm speaking English.
Exactly. And the source suggests keeping a journal, not just for mistakes, but for those wins too. Those times when you feel a surge of confidence or you finally understand a grammar point that's been bugging you.
I love that because sometimes it's so easy to get caught up in what we don't know yet that we forget to celebrate how far we've already come. It's like we need to give ourselves a pat on the back every now and then. You're doing great. Keep going.
You got it. And another great tip from the source is about finding a community of learners. It could be an online forum, a language exchange group, even just connecting with other people who are learning English on social media.
Oh, yeah, because sometimes just knowing that you're not alone in this journey can make a huge difference. It's encouraging to see other people going through the same struggles and celebrating those same little victories.
It is. It's about supporting each other, motivating each other, and celebrating each other's successes. And, speaking of keeping that motivation going, the source really stresses the importance of consistency.
Okay, so it's not about cramming for hours at a time, but more about making English a part of your daily life.
Exactly. It's about those small, consistent efforts over time that really add up.
You know what? I've actually been trying to do that lately. I switched my phone settings to English, and I've started listening to English music while I cook. And you know what? It's pretty amazing how much you can pick up just by surrounding yourself with the language.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
You're basically immersing yourself in English, even when you're not actively studying. And the source talks about the power of immersion, creating that kind of environment where you're constantly exposed to the language.
Yeah, it's like marinating your brain in English. And it's funny because you don't even realize how much you're absorbing until you start to notice those new words and phrases popping up in your own speech.
Right. And have you ever tried that technique that the source mentions called shadowing?
Shadowing. Not sure if I've heard of that one.
Basically, you listen to a native English speaker. It could be from a podcast, a movie, anything really. And you try to imitate their pronunciation and intonation in real time.
Oh, okay. It's like you're shadowing their voice. I can see how that would be really helpful for improving fluency and getting those sounds just right. That sounds pretty challenging, though, to be honest.
It definitely can be. But the source stresses that it's about progress, not perfection. And the more you practice shadowing, the easier it becomes and the more natural your spoken English will sound.
Okay, I am adding shadowing to my list of things to try. We've talked about a lot of techniques and strategies today, and I have to admit it can feel a bit overwhelming sometimes.
Oh, absolutely. It's like trying to choose from a menu with 1,000 options. But the source makes a really good point about being patient with yourself and finding what works best for you. Not every technique is going to resonate with every learner. It's all about experimenting and discovering your own learning style.
That's so true. And, speaking of different approaches, there was something in the source that really struck me. It talks about the power of positive self-talk. And it even provides some specific affirmations like, I can do this. I'm improving every day.
Oh, I love that. We often underestimate the impact our mindset has on our ability to learn. If we're constantly telling ourselves we're not good at languages or we'll never be fluent, well, guess what? We're probably setting ourselves up for failure.
It's like building a mental block before we even begin. Instead of focusing on our potential to grow, we're getting stuck in those negative thoughts and limiting beliefs.
Exactly. But the good news is we can change that. We can choose to shift our mindset. And it starts with becoming aware of those negative thought patterns. Pay attention to that inner voice. Is it being supportive or is it putting you down?
Yeah, that's so important because sometimes those negative thoughts can sneak up on you without even realizing it.
They do. But once you become aware of them, you can start to challenge them. So, for example, if you catch yourself thinking, I'll never get this grammar rule, try countering it with something like, hey, I'm learning and I'm making progress every day.
Okay, so it's about replacing those negative thoughts with positive affirmations, with those I can do this kind of statements.
Exactly. And, affirmations aren't about pretending everything is easy or denying the challenges. They're about choosing to focus on the positive. on your strengths and on your potential for growth. It's like choosing to see the glass half full instead of half empty.
I love that analogy. It's about changing your perspective, focusing on the possibilities instead of the limitations.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the more you practice positive self-talk, the more natural it becomes. It's like building a mental muscle, and with consistent effort, those positive thoughts will become your default setting. It's been so great diving into this source with you today.
Me too. We've covered so much ground, from practical tips to mindset shifts. I feel like I have a whole new toolkit for building confidence in speaking English. And I think one of the most powerful takeaways for me is that it's not about achieving some unattainable level of perfection.
That's so important. It's about embracing the journey, celebrating those small wins along the way, and just finding joy in the process of learning and connecting with others.
Absolutely. And I think that's a really important message for anyone who's ever felt intimidated by the prospect of speaking a new language. Speaking of taking the pressure off, I think it's time we wrap up this deep dive.
Agreed. But before we do, we'd love to hear from you, our amazing listeners. We've shared a lot of insights today, but now it's your turn.
Yeah, we want to know what's one small step you can take today to start building your confidence in English speaking. It could be anything, like practicing a simple phrase in the mirror, or downloading one of those language learning apps we talked about, or even just repeating a positive affirmation to yourself.
Anything that gets you moving in the right direction.
So make that commitment to yourself. Take that first step, no matter how small it may seem. And remember, we're cheering you on every step of the way. We believe in you. You've got this. We really want to hear what you're doing to build your confidence.
Yeah, share it with us. You can find us on social media or send us an email.
We'd love to hear from you.
We'd love to create this community of English language explorers all supporting each other.
Because that's one of the best things about learning a new language, right?
Absolutely.
It's not just about memorizing words and grammar.
Nope.
It's about connecting with people, sharing experiences.
And bridging cultures. It's about opening up this whole new world of possibilities.
And maybe someday, thanks to all your hard work and dedication, you'll be the one inspiring others on their English-speaking journeys.
Imagine that. Going from feeling hesitant and unsure to confidently sharing your knowledge and passion for the language with others.
That's amazing. And it's totally possible. We've seen it happen so many times. People who start with just a little spark of interest and through consistent effort and, a positive mindset, they blossom into these confident communicators.
It's like a transformation.
It really is. And it's a journey we're so excited to be on with you.
So what are you waiting for?
Go out there, embrace the challenge. Remember, every conversation, every interaction, it's all a step in the right direction.
Each step, no matter how small,
Yeah.
brings you closer to that fluency and confidence you're looking for.
We're so glad you could join us for this deep dive into building confidence in speaking English.
We hope you learned something new today.
We hope you feel inspired and motivated. And most importantly, we hope you believe in yourself and your ability to achieve your language goals.
You've got this. We know you do.
Keep practicing, keep exploring, keep those conversations flowing.
And we'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.